The cameras glowed hot, the studio audience cheered, and Stephen Colbert walked onto the stage with his usual stride, holding his blue cards, adjusting his glasses as the band played him in. The night had started like any other, but none of the audience members could have guessed the chaos that was about to unfold when his guest, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, joined him on stage. The first half of the episode had gone smoothly, filled with comedy, political satire, and the usual energy that kept viewers entertained. But as the clock inched past the 30-minute mark, the tone shifted. Colbert introduced her with a flourish, noting her fiery style and rising profile in politics. She walked out in a tailored suit, smiling at the audience, waving with confidence. The crowd cheered warmly. At first, the mood seemed cordial, even playful. Stephen leaned forward on his desk. "Congresswoman Crockett, thank you for being here tonight. You've been making headlines for your, let's say, very blunt style in the House. Some call you refreshing, others say confrontational. How do you see yourself?" She smiled, crossing one leg over the other. "Stephen, I see myself as honest. And sometimes honesty makes people uncomfortable." The audience clapped, enjoying the bold answer. Colbert chuckled, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "Honest is good, but sometimes it feels like your honesty turns into personal attacks. There was that recent hearing where you, well, you know, got into it with your colleagues. Do you think that helps, or does it just add fuel to the fire?" Crockett leaned forward. "What adds fuel to the fire, Stephen, is when the media and even late-night comedians reduce real issues to punchlines. My passion comes from fighting for people who don't get a voice." The audience shifted, murmuring. Colbert adjusted his glasses, caught off guard. He tried to lighten the mood. "Well, hey, I've made a career out of turning the news into punchlines. That's my job. If I can't laugh at Congress, who can I laugh at?" Her voice grew sharper. "And maybe that's part of the problem. People are laughing while the country burns." The applause was scattered, awkward. Colbert blinked, his usual quick wit suddenly on pause. "So, are you saying I'm part of the problem?" "You said it, not me," she replied coolly, her voice slicing through the studio. The tension in the room tightened like a wire pulled taut. Colbert leaned back, his smirk fading. "I invited you here to have a conversation, not a lecture." "And I came here for a conversation, not to be turned into a caricature," she shot back. The crowd gasped, and for a moment the studio felt less like a comedy show and more like a courtroom. The band members exchanged nervous glances. Stephen tried to regain control. "Congresswoman, with all due respect, you're on the Late Show. People want to laugh, not leave here angry." Crockett's eyes flashed. "Maybe people need to leave angry, Stephen. Maybe then they'll actually do something." A smattering of applause broke out, though it was quickly drowned by murmurs and shifting seats. Stephen shuffled his cards, realizing the segment was spiraling. Then came the moment that tipped everything over. He quipped sarcastically, "Well, if you'd like to take over my show and turn it into a campaign rally, be my guest." She stood up abruptly, her microphone crackling as it picked up the sound of her movement. "Maybe I should. At least then people would hear the truth instead of just punchlines." The crowd gasped louder, some clapping, others booing. Colbert held up his hands. Whoa, hold on. This is my stage. You don't just get to come here and hijack it." Her voice rose above the din. "This stage, this platform, belongs to the people. And if you can't handle real talk, maybe you shouldn't be hosting conversations at all." The studio exploded in mixed reactions, cheers, boos, shouts. The director in the booth was yelling into the earpieces, the band had gone silent, and Stephen stood, pointing toward the wings. "Congresswoman Crockett, if you can't respect the format, then I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "Gladly," she snapped, ripping off her mic pack and tossing it onto the chair. She strode across the stage, not looking back. Half the audience erupted in cheers, the other half booed loudly, creating a chaotic echo that shook the studio. Colbert stood frozen for a beat, then turned back to the camera with a strained smile. "Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was something you don't see every night. We'll be right back." The show cut to a commercial, the screen fading to black as the audience buzzed like a hive. When they returned, Stephen tried to play it off with humor, but his tone was rattled, his delivery less sharp. He cracked a few jokes about how maybe the next guest would at least sit down long enough for the interview. The audience laughed nervously, but the electricity of what had just happened lingered in the air. By the end of the broadcast, social media was already ablaze. Clips of the confrontation spread across Twitter and TikTok, headlines forming, Crockett storms off Colbert's stage, Colbert confrontation goes viral. Some viewers praised her courage, others condemned her for disrespecting the platform. Commentators debated whether Stephen had gone too far with his sarcasm or whether Crockett had crossed a line with her defiance. Backstage, producers whispered heatedly, unsure if they'd just had a public relations disaster or a ratings goldmine. Stephen sat in his dressing room later, staring at the playback of the clash. He knew one thing for certain: this episode would be remembered far longer than any of his carefully written monologues. In Jasmine Crockett, she left the studio with cameras chasing her down the sidewalk, reporters shouting questions. She walked with her chin high, repeating only one phrase to the microphones shoved in her face. Sometimes the truth doesn't fit neatly into a punchline. The city hummed around her, neon lights flickering as the night swallowed the chaos. But the echoes of the clash reverberated across the country, sparking conversations in living rooms, offices, and online feeds. What had started as a late-night comedy spot had turned into one of the most explosive confrontations ever seen on live television. And as the credits rolled on that unforgettable night, one thing was certain: both Colbert and Crockett had walked away changed, their fiery clash seared into the memory of millions who had tuned in expecting laughter, and instead got history in the making.